Welcome to the Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast, where host and lacrosse expert Jamie Monroe will do what he does best, talk about lacrosse. Each episode will provide listeners with education, insights, stories, and lessons about the lacrosse world. We will discuss current events, coaching, philosophies, and college lacrosse recruiting. Now let's get started with your host, Jamie Monroe.
How's it going, everybody? Really excited to introduce Ryan Polley to the Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast. Ryan is the head coach, six-year head coach at BU, has built this program from the ground up into being a nationally competitive program. He was Patriot League Coach of the Year in 2017, a two-time New England Coach of the Year, and has a really interesting resume. Really fired up to have you on and to learn more about your program, your philosophies, and how you're getting it done.
Thanks, Jamie. Pleasure to be here, man.
Awesome.
The Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast is brought to you in part by the JM3 Coaches Training Program, now featuring a 7-day free trial period. And here's your host, Jamie Monroe, with more information on how you can get your hands on some of the best lacrosse content out there for free.
How's it going, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to my podcasts. I've had so much fun doing them. I only wish that I'd started recording my lacrosse conversations like 25 or 30 years ago. Now, if you like these podcasts, you will love the content I've created in the JM3 coaches training programs and the academies. Whether you're a coach or a player or a parent, there's so much great information for you guys. I've done this content for men's lacrosse and women's lacrosse, for box lacrosse, field lacrosse, youth lacrosse. And the great news is I've created a 7-day free trial. So if you're tired of endlessly searching the internet for great content, just go to www.jm3sports.com/free trial. And you can get access to all of the content I've created for free for 7 days. Trust me, when you take a look at it, you're going to want more. Almost everybody gets hooked. All right, enjoy the rest of the podcast. All right, as we usually do, I would love to kick this off with just learning about your coaching journey, where you came from, how you got into it, how you got into coaching. Why don't you kind of kick it off from your days back at Malvern Prep?
Yeah, I mean, my journey is a little unique in the sense that coming out of, it kind of just started in high school, trying to figure out what I wanted to play in college. Was a big part of kind of where my career went. And I started lacrosse very late. I didn't start till my sophomore year.
Wow.
Malvern Prep obviously has this unbelievable tradition, and it was a really unique thing. Just I'm a super competitive person, and the Interact at the time did not have any state championships. So basically in football and basketball and baseball, once you played your Interact schedule, your season was done. And lacrosse wasn't sanctioned yet as an Interact sport or whatever the loophole was. Pennsylvania had a state playoff. So I'll never forget this day. Was playing freshman baseball, and we were just walking back, and they were in this playoff game, and they won in overtime. And I had never even seen lacrosse till I got to Malvern. So just this energy that it had, and then just kind of watching this game that I didn't really know that much about, and then winning a quarterfinal game and winning in overtime. And then the whole school ended up going to the semifinals. They played Episcopal, Brian Doherty's team, and Malvern had a great team, but Episcopal was outstanding at the time. And just kind of, that was my first introduction to lacrosse. So awesome. Decided I was going to play the next year. This Coach Rhodey, who was at Malvern and Unionville, and sons both played at Salisbury, really got me into the game. And trying to decide what I was going to play in college, because I was, a basketball player and football were my two major sports.
You were a quarterback?
What's that?
You were a quarterback?
Yeah, I was a quarterback, and then a point guard in basketball. And I wasn't a Division I player, but I was a really good high school player. But lacrosse, I kind of took off. Even though I'd only been playing for 2 years, did an official visit to Notre Dame, did an official visit to Georgetown, and I had offers from both places, and just trying to decide, God, I love football. I love basketball. It's been my whole life. But here's this new sport that I don't know that much about, but I'm starting to get, going out to a Notre Dame basketball game, and it's just kind of cool. But at the end of the day, I chose Merrimack because I felt comfortable on campus. It was kind of the highest level of basketball that I could play. And that's just what at the end of the day, I just love basketball. So I went to play there, play two years of basketball. And then kind of when it didn't work out, picked up football for 2 years. And then my career kind of took a turn. And I decided to try lacrosse. And it was just like this sport that I just fell in love with. It had so many components of both all the sports I had played. And I basically was a basketball player running around with a stick. So kind of when I got out of playing my 4 years, I kind of had to make a decision. What was I going to do with my life? And as far as coaching went, and I just kind of got this, Mr. Conley, Steve, right, was the high school coach at North Andover. He offered me a JV job. And this was my first year out. I was in the accounting world. I was going to take the job. And another connection I had from Merrimack said, hey, do you want to start this girls program? We're starting this brand new program. And it just, my mom is a Hall of Fame field hockey coach from Pennsylvania. And my dad was a coach, almost made the Olympian soccer team. So, I kind of grew up in this family where sports were always in our lives. So just having this decision to coach boys, JV lacrosse, or just kind of take this program over a girl. I was 22. So I said, hey, let's try this girls program. It sounds great. I get to be a head coach. I get to make my own hours, whatever. And, it was a great experience. It was a really cool. Yeah, I did it at Andover High School for 3 years. I learned a ton about just coaching and running a program. And honestly, coaching girls, and as you know with your daughter, is they want to listen. They want to constantly improve, and they want to impress you. That's probably the wrong word, but they're trying to show that they're listening and that they're coachable.
They actually do look at you when you talk half the time.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see them nodding and like, oh, that makes sense. Where the guys are looking at you, but they're probably thinking, well, my way's probably better, so I don't know what. So it was a really fulfilling 3 years. It was hard to leave. And Merrimack, when I left, was in a great position. We won our conference and was, ranked 5th in the country. And then it kind of, after I left, my coach, who we'll talk about later as one of my mentors, he ended up going into his, focusing more on his business, and it was part-time. And then they hired a coach, and it just didn't go right. So Merrimack went from this team that was kind of competing for Final Four bids to, a 3-13 team. And, it was a great opportunity. I think I might have been the only person that applied for the job. I got an opportunity to go back to my alma mater and be the head coach there. Love my experience there, kind of turned the program around, and, was in a position to kind of get the thing really going. And I don't shy away from this conversation. I was asked to leave. I was 26, and I still disagree at what had happened, but I was a little brazen and didn't always, it's part-time, and the challenges coming with communication and being a part-time coach and trying to get this thing off the road, get this thing back to where I thought it belonged. And AD and myself just didn't see eye to eye. So, got called into his office one day and just said, hey, we're going to move in another direction. So, I had this decision to make because both Andover and Merrimack were part-time jobs. And I was I was able to secure accounting jobs with startup companies where I could really dictate my own schedule. I had great bosses that kind of understood this was important to me, and allowed me, as long as I got my work done, to build my schedule, work at home, do different things that allowed me to coach. So it was, but I kind of came to this crossroads where I had to decide, hey, am I going to go the account? I was making a nice salary. Was I going to go this route, or was I really going to take a shot at being a Division I coach? And coincidingly, the opportunity at Yale opened up, and had a great conversation with Coach Shay, and literally had to make the decision to go take a $7,000 job or kind of be comfortable in my other career. So kind of left it all on the table and moved to Connecticut. And it was the best decision I ever made.
No doubt.
Obviously, those 6 years were some of my favorite of my life. Met some great people. Got to be an understudy of Andy. Was given an opportunity 2 years in to run a defense, recruit really have autonomy over not only the kids I recruited, but the defense. And then just certainly, I said I made $7,000, but Andy was so generous in his opportunity to make money off of camp and clinics and things like that.
Hotbeds, baby.
Yeah, that I could make a living. So, that all came to fruition. Spent 6 years there, but my ultimate goal was to kind of work myself up the ladder and be a head Division I coach. And when the opportunity presented itself at Boston, I went for it, guns a-blazing, and was happy to be given this opportunity. And these 6 years have been great.
Very cool. Very interesting. So cool that you got to coach girls lacrosse. I mean, most men will be like, I don't know anything about the game, but actually the games are pretty darn similar. I mean, there's some rules differences. The officiating might drive you insane, but in the end, the fundamentals of that, in the teamwork and the movements and the skills and the footwork, I mean, it's all pretty much the same.
So I got like two funny stories about that. So, I mean, very true. The game is, everyone says it's so different, and certainly there is, but at the end of the day, there's still off-ball movement. There's still passing is still king. You can do different things, defensively that are similar. Sliding's a little bit similar. But two stories that always stick out to me is just like my first practice, not understanding shooting space and having a girl like literally trying to explain it to me and not really get it, but kind of get it. But like I knew it was a rule, but I'm teaching something, and this girl who was Diana Crawford, whose dad was a longtime referee, coming up to me like, "Coach, you're teaching this role that you can't do. We can't do that." And I was like, unbelievable, like trying to like decipher. And literally my first impression to these girls is I want to come off as I know what the hell I'm talking about and teaching something incorrectly, but this girl kind of having the confidence to come up to me and try to help. And then the second one is we played Beverly, who at the time was my first game, was a good team. And my roommate my roommate who played basketball with me at Merrimack, I just asked him to be my assistant coach, and he said, yeah, and he's a great guy. And he went on to coach Merrimack or coach Andover after I left. But the first game, we win this game. Like Beverly's like, they have tradition, and literally this is our first time ever on a field. And it was kind of Massachusetts normal winter where we had yet to be on the field. We were in a field house. So John and I go up to the field. We get there an hour early. We're literally walking on the fields and looking at the lines because we've seen it in a rule book, but we didn't really know how big a fan was. We really didn't know how big we are. So we're like pacing it off and we're walking. We're like, whoa, look at this. So anyway, we end up winning this game. Our goalie, I'll never forget, our goalie sends on our head. But we call timeout, and girls are crying, and girls are like losing their mind. And I mean, must have 3 or 4 girls cried in the game, and we're riding home on the bus. And I'm like, John, what happens when we lose? Like we just won this like incredible game, and girls were crying, and it turned out to be fine. And it was just like, and the guys are emotional too, but it was just kind of like this, holy smokes, what do we get ourselves into? But
no doubt.
Like I said earlier, it was so fun, and still really good memories of my coaching career.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I would love to hear about along the way the mentors that sort of shaped you, and maybe either stories or things that you learned from them.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest mentor in my life was certainly my mother. I mean, just watching her career and how she coached. I mean, she had one job her entire life. She was the athletic director at Villa Maria High School, and outside of Malvern, so it's the sister school of Malvern Prep, and just to kind of see how professional she was and how diligent she was, and having this the standard that she set for her programs, won multiple state championships, and just a litany of games, and just to kind of watch her and how important it was to her, but to never lose focus on her focus on her team and her kids, and kind of non-negotiables that she grew up with, and that she instilled in her team. I mean, she was the one that would always come home and talk to me about a game. I very much liked following her career, and followed her teams, and it was really my first introduction to coaching at a full-time level, and someone, even though it was high school, took it very serious and very competitive. So she by far was my biggest influence. And then my 2 college coaches that I worked with, Frank Alloy was just a really good person. You talk about a coach's coach. Frank was just tremendous in that respect. Very rarely over my 4 years with him did I see him get upset and lose his mind. Always very calm, collective. You couldn't really look at him and tell if we were winning by 5 goals or losing 5 goals. He kind of had this just demeanor about him and this stability that, as a young coach and someone who was kind of furthering their career, I tried to emulate because it's hard for me because I'm an emotional guy. I'm very competitive. So sometimes my face is a little bit different when we're down 5, when we're up 5. So just trying to always keep that in the back of my mind. I admire that very much about Frank. And then just from a recruiting style, just hard work. Here was a guy that was running a full-time business, very successful business. And then in his spare time was coaching this high school or coaching this college team. So in my early career, I was doing things very similar to Frank, where I had a full-time job and that was paying the bills, but I still had to make time and be creative in my recruiting and be really efficient with my time. So I had multiple conversations with Coach about that, of just being a full-time, accountant, but also doing this full-time so that I could be successful at my place so I could build my career. And then lastly, Andy was such a big influence on me, from not only just, being a mentor and showing me kind of the ropes, but just, the biggest, I always call Andy like the king of culture. Like he is, I think he's best served when he finds 2 really good coordinators that can, he can have influence on the offense and defenses, but he can put his attention to the culture and the team building, and he's just a master of it. And there was times early in my career that I disagreed with some of his philosophies, and I found it as a defensive coordinator. If I had 20 guys on my defensive unit, the guys 1 through 12 that were playing meaningful minutes, like those were the guys that it was easier to communicate with those guys because I had stuff to talk to them about, whether it was improving their, game plan or improving something that I think would help us on Saturdays. And Andy really made me take a step back and say, I got to worry about 13 through 20 too. And that certainly he was worried 1 through 45. And he always said that, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And at times I didn't believe it, but as the program got better and I saw the how much those guys on the lower half as far as talent were meaning to the team, from a scout, from an energy, from just guys would do anything for those guys, and when they got their opportunities in the games, guys would go crazy. I really came in kind of full circle that these guys are really important, and if I don't give it their due attention, that the team's not going to reach its full potential. So I love that from Andy. I learned just so much from him, just from just an X's and O's standpoint, just how to prepare. One thing that was always key is just there's a life outside of lacrosse. Sometimes you get so caught up in worrying about wins and losses, but you lose track of personal health, families, things like that. And, I appreciated Andy's perspective on that. Work-life balance, that we don't always have to go to every single event in November, just those things that I think Andy became the master of. And then certainly recruiting almost in year 3, we changed our entire recruiting philosophy, and we made character and toughness, competitiveness, we made that the staple of our recruiting. And obviously, it's done wonders for Yale, and we're trying to, emulate that at what we do at BU.
A lot of people don't realize that Andy might have been like 5-25 in his first 5 years.
Yeah.
In the Ivy League. And for a lot of coaches, they can't recover, but it wasn't like all of a sudden Andy became smart or hardworking. I'm sure he learned a lot, because when you become a head coach, it's like you can't prepare for it. You can read all the books you want, but it's like being a new parent. Like you just
100%.
But that said, though, he was able to turn this into a dominant force and do some things that Ivy League schools have never done.
He never lost focus of who he was and how he wanted his program to run. And that, even though we weren't winning games in my first couple of years, there was still a discipline instilled. never cut corners. We just weren't quite as talented as some teams. We lost a couple of games that maybe we shouldn't have.
Yep.
Came down, but it was all this culture thing, and I'll never forget just it became a little bit like I used to get sick of it because for 6 years he would say this to the team over what team is going to be the team that gets us over the hump. We haven't won since 1990. There's only been four. He would say it's only been 4 10-win teams in Yale history. I'm sick of hearing about it. I'm sick of living it. Are you going to be the team that gets us over the hump? And finally, my last year, we won an Ivy League title. My 4th year, there was a 4-way tie, but it really came out to my last year with the senior group that just wasn't going to be denied and got us over the hump. And then it steamrolled from there. So, but it was constantly, not that it was a pressure, but it was always in the forefront of our minds that there was unfinished business and we need to get to that next step. And I related a lot to BU. Like I kind of feel we're in this same path of like getting better every single year, kind of flirting 14 through 20 every year, but have yet to have that staple win late in the season. And I'm hoping it's coming because, as you said, people forget. Andy didn't really have a lot of success till like ultimate success till year 10. So we're in year 7, and I'm trying to stay patient, and it's hard to because we're what have you done for me lately, society? But we're all competitive, but we're so close, Jamie. If you would have said this is your resume 6 years in, I would have said, hell yeah, I'll take that. This is great. But once you're living it, you're a goal short here or a pipe there, and you're like, shit. Like we could have won this whole. We could have won the whole Patriot League last year. We were as talented as anybody, and just we came up a goal short, and sometimes that happens. So I'm very positive and very proud of what we've done here. I think we're only on the upswing. I think we're only getting better. The challenge is everybody else is getting better too. I mean, Loyola's trying to win a national championship every day. Navy the same way. Joe's a great coach at Army. I mean, it's a who's who of coaches in our league. So it's just a challenging thing that I love to get up and compete at every day. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm dying to take that next step with this program.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's the step from not very good to pretty good isn't that hard to make.
Mm-mm.
Right? The step from pretty good to really good is step, is a harder step, and from really good to consistently, those are all steps, and they do take time. And I want to get back into a little bit of the conversation about culture, because obviously you learned a lot from, as you say, Andy the King culture. You had a choice when you first got to BU. You had a club team there. You really had a blank canvas to create whatever it was that you wanted to create. So how did you do that? And give us a little rundown of how it's evolved.
Yeah, so I got the job in July 2012. They announced the program was going to launch in January. And I'll never forget just sitting on my computer like I am now, and this thing comes up on Inside Lacrosse. Hey, BU starting lacrosse. I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. And, was fortunate enough to go through an interview process. And, as you know, Jamie, it's all timing. Like we ended up winning the Ivy League that year. And if we don't win the Ivy League, I'm probably not even under consideration. So, we go to the NCAA tournament, go through a 3-month, 3-month process and end up at the end of the day winning the tournament. And it's funny because I was heading out to your camp when I got the call. I was actually the second choice. So I ended up getting the call that I wasn't the guy. Then I end up going out to your camp for the weekend out in Denver. And then I get back on Tuesday and there hasn't been an announcement yet. So I'm like waiting for this thing to just kind of finalize. And then I'll never forget, I get a 617 call. I'm like, this can't be happening. And it happened. And the AD called me and said, listen, things change and we'd love to have you. And I don't care. Like I wanted the job, and my feelings weren't hurt because, the other candidate was a fantastic coach. And I said, great. So, but then all of a sudden you have this job and you're, well, what are we going to do here? So as you mentioned, BU had 35 years of club. We had about 40 kids on the club team. So I took a hard look at that. at the time I was fortunate that there was probably 5 or 6 other startup programs that happened in the last 5 years, from Presbyterian to Mercer to Michigan, High Point, Furman. Furman was the year with us, but all the other ones had happened right before us. So I kind of looked at their records, kind of saw where they were. And the one that I really concentrated was Michigan. I was very curious about Michigan, just from a sense that they were the best club team. They were either 1 or 2 or 3 in the club landscape. And then I think they might have had 2 years of NCAA lacrosse under their belt, and they just weren't doing well. So, and I kind of looked at their roster and saw kind of their blueprint was to take 80% of the club team and then kind of start sprinkling in, recruits, 20% recruited players. So when I saw that they weren't doing well and struggling to be competitive, and I knew that their club team was considerably better than the one that I was inheriting at BU, I said, we probably got to go in the opposite direction. So we made the decision pretty quickly that we were going to do the exact opposite. We were going to be about 85% recruited athletes, transfers, and then we backfill the roster with club kids. So the club program had 1 more year, so they played it out. We made it very clear what we were doing. I met with the club team. I said, you're going to have your club year. I am not going to be the coach. They had their own coaches. You'll play out this year, and then everyone who has not graduated will be given an opportunity to try out. So that was kind of set. And we went out and recruited 31 freshmen. Started in July, and then just kind of worked as hard as we could. And I mean, first day in the office, I had 8 recruits. It was walk up, comm Ave, walk back, drop somebody off, walk up. And I was with Coach Kelleher, who I know was working his tail off too. But we got 31 kids sign up. We had 6 transfers, and then we kept 6 club kids. So that was our first roster, 43 kids of that makeup. So it was an incredible first year. Learned a ton. Was actually more competitive than I thought we would be. We only won 2 games, but lost to Army by a goal. Played Loyola the year after the national championships. We were down 2 goals going in the fourth quarter. So I mean, there were some really good games. I mean, we could have won 4 or 5 games that year if the ball would have kind of broken our way. But we just weren't ready. We weren't these kids were literally a year out of high school, and just kind of when those big plays needed to be made, the teams with some senior leadership or just some guys that have kind of been through the battles, or at least some of them, right. Found ways to win. But it was a great experience to get these guys a ton of playing time, and then certainly to be ready to come back years 2, 3, and then as seniors with all this experience have a great year.
You mentioned earlier you learned from your mom about non-negotiables. What are those that you brought to BU, and has that kind of evolved since you got there?
Yeah, I mean, we have our 5 pillars, and this is another pretty good story that I like to tell. So I just mentioned that Loyola game, and some are non-negotiable, and then some are just things that we like our players represent and kind of embody these. So we played Loyola, and like I said, it was a great game. We didn't have Carson Bannister, who was our starting goalie, 4-year starter, playing the MLL, and which is a great player. He ends up getting concussed the week before. We're playing our backup goalie. Loyola's a defending national champion. We're playing in their stadium. This is a big time event for us. And you look up and it's we're down 2 at half, and then we score the first goal, so we're down 1. Then we make some plays in the fourth quarter, and to start the fourth quarter, and there's 7 minutes to go, and we're only down 3, and they went on a little run, and they end up pushing the game, win by 6 or 7. But we go back into the locker room, and guys are disappointed, but proud of their effort. And I said, listen, we had some time before our flight. I said, here is the gold standard. Here's defending national champion, the best team in our league. This is where we want to get. What do you think they're doing, or what do you think we're going to have to do in the future to get to this level? So I gave every single kid, still in their uniforms, gave every single kid a piece of paper. And I said, write as many as you want. Write sentences, write words, whatever comes to your mind, write it down. So they wrote it. I collected it in the airport. Like these things and these words kept coming, the similarities of the words just kept coming back to these 5 things. So I said, okay, well, here's, some people would say competitive versus, being in the game, playing to win or whatever it was. But we came up with these 5 words and we just made them our staples. So it's accountability, it's motor, it's hard work, it's compete, and it's family. Like, it came back to those 5 words. It's up in our locker room, and they're not just cliche. Like, we try to live every single day under these pillars, that if we can be accountable to one another, if we work hard, and motor and work hard are pretty similar. And to me, those are the 2 kind of non-negotiables, is that we're not a blue blood yet. We hope to get there someday, but we're not a major. I consider us a mid-major. So for us to be competitive and for us to win these games and compete at the highest level and try to win a national championship, the non-negotiables are we're going to have to outwork people, and we're going to have to bring a constant energy to it. So those are kind of the 2 non-negotiable. We hope through the recruiting process, we find people that have come from great families and believe in our family belief. Certainly same thing with competitiveness, and then, accountability, that's a hard word for anybody. So I think we try to instill that from the moment they get in here, that you're going to be accountable to your teammates, and you're going to be, more importantly, accountable to yourself. So that's like, it's a non-negotiable, but that's always a work in progress. Right. Where the other 2, that we just talk about working hard and bringing energy. Like, that's just what we do here.
The accountability is so critical, like you said, to yourself and to your teammates. And it's really important to try to get your team to quality control that amongst themselves.
Sure.
How do you do that?
Well, sometimes it happens innately. You just have this great group of leaders that just, guys don't mess with them for whatever reason. They don't want to disappoint them. Their delivery is impeccable. A little bit of ass kickers. And then sometimes you got to work at it. So for the last 3 years, I meet every week with my seniors. We pick a book to read. I try to relate it to much as I can to the current team and kind of the needs of it. And it starts out as kind of just a baseline for us to spur conversation. But during these, nothing is off limits. And I'm trying to, as best as I can, talk about the things that I need them to hold their teammates accountable, hold themselves accountable, and kind of move this team forward. So this year, it's every Monday we meet probably for 45 minutes and just go through team issues, and then relate it back to the book. We read a chapter a week, and we've done this year. We're reading the 5-second rule, and it's basically, the concept is, you can basically convince yourself to do anything if you give yourself 5 seconds and almost convince yourself that this is an important thing. So there's different tactics, and I'm really working with this senior class on holding our team more accountable and being a little bit more outspoken in their leadership. As I said, every year is a little bit different. I have wonderful seniors. I have 7 wonderful kids. You would want your daughters to marry any one of them, but we need a little bit of a kick in the ass. So trying to get these kids to step out of their comfort level a little bit, and just lead with a little bit of edge is what we're trying to accomplish this year. Completely different from what we had accomplished last year. Because I had 4 alphas who had been, starters for 4 years, and that was just how they were going to lead. And so it's funny. I don't know if you experienced at DU, and sometimes it goes in cycles, because when you have alphas, sometimes the class behind it, because these kids have been leading for multiple years, and that they're such strong presence, they get suppressed. Yep. So when their first opportunity to lead, they have to learn a little bit, because they just weren't really given opportunities as juniors to lead. And then sometimes when you have some guys that take a backseat, the class behind them is like ready to go, because they kind of have to step up a little bit. So it's interesting that I've kind of, over the last 4 years, have had a little bit of a cycle of these alphas, and nothing wrong with these kids not being alphas, because you can lead in so many different ways effectively, but just not having like alpha class is pretty interesting to me.
That is. I've got a question on leadership and getting accountability, sort of quality controlled by the team. When you're a strong coach,
yep.
How do you balance quality controlling it yourself?
Sure.
Letting them make mistakes, recognize mistakes, correct mistakes.
Well, I think it starts not only with them, but it starts with your assistants. I mean, you can't, this isn't a dictatorship. And I'll say this, there's probably the quote I say the most to my team. I don't say it to my assistants hear me say it all the time. This is your team. Like I'm the captain of the ship, and I'm going to help it steer it in the direction that I think everybody wants it to go. But at the end of the day, this is your team. So you have to step up and be accountable. You have to drive this thing in the direction you want it to go if we're going to be most successful. So if there's a day that we're not feeling great, or legs are tired, or we're just beat up because we've been going hard, the expectation is my seniors or an upperclassman comes in and gives me that heads up. Like, they're the guys that's living it. I trust them. I try to empower them. They've been part of the program for multiple years, so I think they know what it takes to be successful. So I try to view myself as a player's coach, but also someone who is not afraid to listen to their opinions and value their opinion. And sometimes I'll disagree with them and say, boys, I really appreciate you coming with me, but we need to get better. We haven't gotten better over the last week, so we're gonna have to ramp it up a little bit, even though you're tired, because we're just not improving. But having that open dialogue is really important to me. And it starts with my assistants. I got 2 great paid assistants and a wonderful volunteer assistant who, is one of the best in the country. And, I'm fortunate to have guys that have great opinions, try to, like I said, empower them to bring something to the table if they feel it's in the betterment of the team, and then certainly have open dialogue about how I can help them improve, this team improve, and this program improve.
Yeah, I got a chance to watch an early season practice this past fall and was really impressed with your whole operation, with the energy and from not only the players, but the coaches. And it was cool. You kind of let those coaches coach and let the kids work. And it was really impressive. Talk to me a little bit about, you talk about hard work and motor. You said they're kind of similar, but how do you look at them as different?
Well, hard work is, I would say that is over a length of time. So hard work is I'm going to be committed to working hard for a duration of a period of time so that my skills will improve, and I'm going to come in early and stay late and do extra shooting and do all those things. So I kind of look at that as a duration of time. When I think of motor, I just think of in the moment, going 100 miles an hour, and never going to, lose a play because I didn't hustle or I didn't try hard enough. Like, that's kind of what I see motor is just this constant energy, running from drill to drill, just bringing this energy to lift, bringing energy to a 6 a.m. lift. Like, that's motor to me. It's not, and just this hard work is just almost a mentality of, this is who I'm going to be in my everyday life. And then motor being in the moment.
Excellent. All right, let's switch gears. One of the biggest jobs of any coach, and especially in a startup situation, trying to make that next step, is developing. Probably your biggest opportunity is making your players better, developing your players.
Sure.
What's your philosophy, and how do you guys go about doing that? What's your player development philosophy?
I always think that it's kind of a part whole philosophy, that we're going to deal with parts of the player before we start really getting into, kind of the big picture and, working on the 6-on-6 and rides and things like that. Our philosophy is we need to get better as individuals before we can get better as a team. So I really like the way that we do our entire season. The first 4 weeks, we don't really come together as a team. We allow the kids, number one, to get acclimated to school. The first week, we don't pick up a stick. We do strength and conditioning testing just to kind of see where the guys are from the summer, see where we are conditioning-wise, to see if we have to ramp that up a little bit. But that first week is literally just testing, and we don't really see the guys. They're focused on school, making sure that, the freshmen certainly are acclimated, and the upperclassmen are kind of getting their feet wet again. And then weeks 2 through 4 is just all skill development. It is 3 1-hour sessions of, mostly stick work for the offense and footwork, incorporated in kind of what we do offensively, but it's not 6 guys, it's smaller numbers. And then certainly the defense is working on individual skills, ground ball work, stick work, how we hold the stick, how we approach, all these little details, so that kind of when we hit that first practice, most of the, even our practices are set up where most of the practice is individually based and working on individual skills. But once we start getting into the team stuff, we're not constantly stopping to say, we want you to change this from a fundamental standpoint. So I would say developing the individual is certainly an important part of what we do. We really expect the individual to get better from a stick skill, from an IQ standpoint, from athletic standpoint. And we spend a lot of time individually doing that, where with the NCAA changing the rule, we really could be practicing more, but we kind of push back and say we're still going to keep our individual time because we really think that's important to our individual development.
How much of your individual time is live reps versus kind of skeleton stick work and just, footwork?
I'd say most of the offensive stuff, it's not live on a defense, but it's going full speed. So between the stick work that Coach Slippo's doing, that has footwork and stick work combined, the expectation is you're going for 20 to 30 second high intensity game like speed as much as we can. So I would say probably 60 to 70% of that is small group work, and then maybe 25 to 30% is live stick work in a skeleton offense sense. But the majority of it is in small group work, or it's a midfield rotation or attack rotation that is part of our 6-on-6 offense, but it's not, a full 6-on-6.
Right. Yeah. I simply ask because I've been really interested lately in just thinking about decision-making as one of the most important elements of an athlete's life
Sure.
in any sport.
Yeah.
Obviously the skills, mastering the footwork, mastering the stick work, mastering the shooting, mastering the communication, understanding the movements, where you want to be. That's all critical stuff.
We talked about that when you came out. I remember sitting on the field and we were watching offensive drill. I always find and we talk about this in the offense, it's just really hard to replicate the decisions that you have to make in a drill. Without,
it is.
You can set it up, but it's just, I think we'd all feel better if we could say, all right, these are the decisions that you're going to have to make. All right, let's replicate a drill that is going to put you in those on a small field setting that you can make those decisions 5-10 times in a drill. I mean, certainly we can do small field drills, and West Jenny is a big drill that we use just because it helps us making decisions, clearing the ball, riding, whether ride up, ride back, or 3-on-2s, whatever that might be. You get all those quick decisions. But if you said, okay, let's put you on half a field, half of a field where you're going to catch the ball and you're going to have to make a decision to throw the ball inside or throw it to an adjacent or skip it, it's hard to replicate those things and get the exact look that you're going to see in the game.
It's funny because I think sometimes, you have such a big basketball background, and if people don't know, you are a legit hoop player. You always seem to win the 3-on-3.
I only won it once.
What?
Well, yeah, I only won it with Slippo's. He's the king.
Slippo is the king. All right. Well, you're on a team that always should have won it, I think.
Yeah, should have. I didn't have Slippo.
Actually, I think you were just suffering from the early head coach, not working out as much as you should work out.
In my prime, I'll take my team over Slippo's team in my prime.
But anyways, it was probably, I bet you would point to basketball as where you learn so much about all of the athletic IQ that you have, whether it's how to beat
100%.
somebody, how to see what's going to happen before it happens, how to read screens, both sides of the ball, how to make adjustments. Those are the kinds of decision-making things that I'm sort of alluding to, and it's like, I kind of feel like in hoops, it's like it happens so naturally because, you play so much 3-on-3, 2-on-2, 1-on-1, full court, whatever it is, you're just constantly playing. And I think that's the reason why I'm asking is because I feel like in our sport of lacrosse, it's one of the missing links. You have to be good at all the skills. There's no denying any of that. But it's like, how do you teach a hesitation move? Mm-hmm. Teach it all you want, but at the end of the day, the hesitation, the feel for, when you get a step on somebody, that now's the time to hesitate, right? Not, everyone thinks of fakes and stuff to set up your move. It's more about after you beat somebody that you start setting up the sliders and hesitating. It's a little counterintuitive to do that, but that's kind of like where I'm on this kind of mission to figure all this stuff out. And so I know your basketball background is so strong that I figured you'd have some thoughts on that.
No, we had this conversation. I hear what you were saying, and I actually put some thought into it. It's practice real estate is so tight. So am I going to go to practice and say, all right, boys, we're going to play 3-on-3 today, and like I'm not dismissing your idea, but to take 20 minutes and play 3-on-3, and I don't know if a lot of coaches could live with that. Like, that is just something where, all right, I'm going to take 1/6 of my practice and I'm going to just let the dude ball. You know what I mean?
No, I get it, man.
And that is something. But listen, if it's getting you better and guys enjoy it, because it's a long season, it's a really long season, and the fall is becoming, certainly with the changing of the rules where we can practice more, this has probably been our toughest fall since my first year, just because we've practiced more. We're a young team. We think we need guys to play more, so we've practiced more. So trying to give guys breaks and be okay with it is something that every, I think, coach struggles with, because you want to joystick it a little bit. And when you just let guys go out and play, there's not a ton of joystick. The guys are just playing, seeing the read, and making plays.
No doubt.
So,
you guys, I love the way you play. And I've been watching some BU film from last year. I had one of my editors cut up a few games. And I had Coach Slippo did an awesome presentation on the offense that you guys run. How would you characterize your offensive philosophy?
I would just say up-tempo. I mean, that's probably the best way to say it. Free-flowing. We'll be different than what we were last year. Obviously, we had a great player who the ball was in his stick 75-80% of the time we were on offense. And Chris was a great player and made most of the time great decisions. And this year we'll be different. I think we'll have more pieces and a little bit more talent across our top 9. But we just won't have that one player who's dominating the ball and then making players play off of him. So I'm very curious to kind of see how our offense evolves with just more sharing of the ball. And not that Chris was selfish, because he was very unselfish, but the ball just started in a stick a bunch. Yeah. So I think the best way I can describe it is up tempo. We're still going to push transition. We're still going to play with our face-off guy and LSM, give them green lights to dodge and shoot and do all those things. And then certainly we're going to take the best shot available. Like if we take a shot 10 seconds in and it's a great shot, then take the shot. We're not one of these that we have to get the clock under 40 and we're going to slow the game down. If our first dodge, we get right in and it's a great shot, we encourage our kids to take that shot. Game situations, can dictate differently, but for the most part, we are a dodge, move the ball, make decisions, and we get a good shot, we're taking it.
How much 6-on-6 do you guys normally play on the average, would you say?
15 minutes. We're not a huge, most of our practice is skill development. We do 4-on-4 stuff a lot, just trying to get those kind of decisions with bigger spaces, certainly for the defense to play a bigger space and help and recover. So we do a lot of 4-on-4, 5-on-5. Like I said, the West Jenny thing was huge for us last year as far as just making decisions in the clear and the ride. We thought we were an excellent riding team last year because of that. We do West. We kind of, my assistants always joke with me because Coach Lattimore kind of brought this idea when he was at Penn and they were really successful playing 2-way middies. He said we did West Jenny every day, and it really forced our defensemen to make decisions and riding. And I kind of just took it and ran with it, where our West Jenny is we do a 10-man out of West Jenny. We sometimes allow the guys to ride. Sometimes it's a free clear. Sometimes you can ride and you get jumped. So there's all these different variables that we do to try to create different situations in this small field setting. But like I said, my assistants always joke with me, what brainchild are you going to come up with today that it's going to take 20 minutes for the guys to understand what the hell's going on, and then we got to move on to the next drill.
It's different ways of running your West Jenny to give yourself different looks, right?
Exactly. Like a press ride versus a drop ride. Sometimes we don't allow them to ride. Sometimes we'll put an extra guy in there. You can come over midfield. So we're working on running the ball out. So
So in other words, the West Jenny, usually the last guy you touch it is out and it's a 3-on-2, but sometimes you'll allow it to be a 3-on-3 to the midline. Like that.
Exactly. We have like a fuzzy line that they can ride to this, and then the defenses can step up and really pressure them.
Talk a little bit about those 4-on-4s and 5-on-5s. I mean, I feel like those are such a staple. 6-on-6 is great in many ways, but it's also maybe a little bit too easy for the defense. And it seems like with the 4-on-4 and 5-on-5, you find that good balance of putting some real pressure on your defense while giving your offense chances to.
Yeah, a lot of times we'll do 4-on-4 and then we'll have a passer at X. So that like a open coach where they can still, because a lot of times if you end up not having a ball through X, that there's so much space that you throw passes that typically in a 6-on-6 setting won't get through.
Or it's only throwbacks, right?
Yeah, or it's only throwback. Exactly. So, I think 4-on-4, especially if you're trying to do different things defensively, if you're trying to slide quickly, obviously it's great for that because there's a lot of space. If you're trying to slow down your slides and be a real hedge-oriented defense where you're constantly showing and getting back, it really forces you because there's so much space to be really strong on the ball, but also have that great presence before you actually start to dodge. So your off-ball positioning is paramount because you got to be in the right spot and then be able to get back to yours as the dodge starts. So, anytime you reduce the number of players, it also creates just different, slide packages. You could be in a 4-on-4. Very rarely you're going to be in a crease slide because, a lot of times they're going to end up in an open set.
Yep.
A lot of times it could be
that guy at X sometimes, so you can actually kind of play your 4-man motion, get crease slides, and
exactly
the right way.
Yeah, and just when you're in that 6-on-6 setting, you just kind of have two guys that are furthest away from the ball that can kind of pick up the trash and help with any mistakes that you might make for a split second. And 4-on-4, you really don't. You make a mistake, and 4-on-4 defensively, you're giving up a really high quality shot, and it gives the offense space and allows them to be creative and get confidence, I guess.
Yeah. How about your defensive philosophy and how does it fit into the things we've just been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone all over the place, and we try to make it as personnel-based as possible. Certainly, I made a living at Yale towards the end of my career as being a really slide-heavy defense, creating a lot of turnovers, having a lot of moving pieces. And when I first got to BU, we were out of necessity, we had to slide a lot just because we weren't as athletic as some of the teams. And unfortunately, we just didn't have the experience. And, a lot of those decisions on the back end, we just weren't experienced or as good as the teams at Yale. So we were making mistakes and giving up some easy shots. So we've gone back and forth. Our best year, Coach Toomey, who's now at Tufts, he was running the defense. He created more of a Notre Dame defense slide when you need to. And that was our best year. We had some really good D-middies. We had some, 2 MLL players on the defensive end, Wozniak kid and the Callisto kid that were as good as anybody in our league. And, we did some really good things defensively by just playing straight up and sliding when we had to. And they were 4-year starters and had a lot of experience. And then last year, losing those guys, we went to basically almost an automatic, not quite Holy Cross and Bucknell, but almost we were sliding the majority of the time to the initial dodge. So a lot of moving pieces, and we led the country in turnovers, which fit with our philosophy of transition, and that we scored a lot of goals in transition off of creating havoc. And we give up some shots because as the season goes and sticks get better and teams get film on you, they kind of understand, where your weaknesses are. But we created a ton of turnovers, started a ton of transition, and scored a lot of goals. So even if we're giving up a couple goals, as teams knew what we were doing and a lot of moving pieces, we also found that we created a lot of turnovers and started some transition and capitalized on the other end.
Creating turnovers on early slides to force bad passes or double teams or
both. Yeah, really both. I mean, we kind of give guys, one thing that we try, we like going to people's backs. Anytime you see a kid's back, you almost have the green light to go to it with the hope of him rolling back and making a play. We talk about motor, getting that last poke, getting sticks in the passing lanes, deflect passes. And a lot of times you might get a turnover where you don't get transition, but you get 3 guys to a ball just because you just have more of a motor than the other team, and you come up with the ball as opposed to only one guy going and the 2 other guys just kind of watching the rest. So, certainly that's part of our defensive philosophy is to have a motor. Our defense coordinator, Max Silverlick, we were searching for our identity. 2 years ago, we did not have a good defensive team, and actually one of the worst in Division One. The 1 year I run the defense here, Jane, we were the worst in D1. So, we were trying to find our identity, and he came up with this word TOM, T-O-M, and it's toughness, organized, and motor. So he wants our guys obviously to be tough, and the organization. Are we sliding? Are we not sliding? How do we recover? Details, and then just playing with a motor. So, continuing to get multiple guys to the balls, creating turnovers, being, making hustle plays so that we can get the turnovers is certainly something that we did really, really well last year.
How do you characterize the need for matchups versus slide? And is there a way to get the best of both worlds? It seems like some of those really slide early teams that you referenced before, such as Bucknell, sometimes it seems like they're sliding early to everything and they're still somehow getting a pull over the backside.
Yeah. Sometimes I think it's just luck.
I was kind of wondering. I figured you in the league would know, but
yeah, I think you just got 4 out there and you're sliding usually to a short stick. So, probability is there's 3 on the backside and only 1 short on the backside. So, obviously teams are so smart that, if you start sliding early, they manipulate it. So in 2 passes, you're approaching again with a short stick. So, that's certainly something that, Andy always called it the play phase offensively. We need to be prepared for the play phase defensively. Once a team goes, they know we're early sliding, they're going to do their first motion. But a lot of times it's a dummy motion to get into what they really want, and that's on the secondary dodge. So having a plan ready not only for the initial dodge, but also as the ball gets moved to either actually the backside or thrown back, you're really ready with what your game plan is.
Switching gears, the Patriot League is just such a gauntlet. What a great conference.
Yeah, it really is.
Who's who of coaches? You've got a national champion in Loyola, and you've got a bunch of teams, honestly, that could compete for it every year. Talk to us a little bit about how exciting it is to be in that conference and how hard it is.
Yeah, the first thing I say this all the time is there isn't a bad coach in the bunch, and every week is a little bit different from a coaching style. There's 9 teams, so you end up playing 8 of them, and they're all a little bit different. But you just kind of look at some of these schools that are a little less resourced, and the fact that they compete and they win, the fact what Frank Federaco does at Bucknell is just, it's incredible. It's just absolutely incredible. And he's just a great coach, and you have to be prepared for anything when you go up against Frank. And, Charlie's one of the best in the business, and what a great person he is. And certainly, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Loyola's trying to win a national championship every year. And that's just something, certainly BU is trying to do the same. But, I think we're trying to do it in an efficient and building philosophy where I think Loyola is there, and obviously they captured that a couple of years ago. And then you certainly have your service academies that are doing a wonderful job as well. So it really is, a murderer's row as you go through, the conference. I look at even where we've been, the first year aside, I think out of the last 5 years, I think we've beaten the tournament champion 4 out of the 5 years. And then out of 3 out of 5, we've lost to a team that didn't even make our conference tournament. So it's just it's crazy. It's just really crazy how difficult the schedule is. Anybody can beat anybody. And you can never relax. There's teams that aren't towards the end of the season aren't playing for anything, but they still give you everything they get. You can handle and end up beating some really quality teams. So, the hardest thing, we talk about this in our coaches meeting, is trying to figure out a way that from an RPI standpoint, how to get our conference, a little bit higher in that. But it's really just all the teams playing each other and beating each other. Really one of the major components of RPI, as is winning. So if you're constantly going 5-3 and 4-4 and 6-2, those 2 losses come back and really hurt your RPI. So, last year we were 5-3. Lehigh was 5-3 and was the 2nd seed. So, and then a bunch of teams. Navy was 4-4. And I actually thought it was mathematically impossible to be 4-4 and not make our conference tournament, and Navy found a way being 4-4 and not make our tournament. So it's definitely a grind, and it'll be interesting with Joe coming in at Navy, and certainly a couple new coaches the previous years. It kind of the guard has changed a little bit from a head coaching perspective.
I feel like it would be there should be 8 teams that make the tournament in that conference.
Yeah, it would be competitive, I would say.
Quarterfinal,
Yeah, it certainly would be. I actually like the way we do it. 6 making it and 1 and 2 getting that bye. That bye is critical. I honestly think and Lehigh's a great team, and they weren't playing their best ball towards the end of the year, and we were playing really well, and we ended up losing a game at Navy to one goal game, and that was a difference between a second and a third seed in the bye. And Lehigh made one more play than us, and they were a little bit fresher, and give them all the credit in the world for turning around because they weren't playing well, and endured a myriad of injuries. Kevin did a tremendous job last year, but those 1 and 2 seeds go a long way as far as getting that Tuesday off, because if not, you're playing 4 games in 11 days, that's a grind.
Big time. All right, last question. How do you guys recruit at BU? What are you looking for, from a character perspective, academically, athletically, skill, IQ?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with the transcript. BU, since I've been here, has gone from low 50s in the U.S. World Reports to, low 30s. So we've really made a push. And as you talked about, it's easy to kind of go, even lacrosse, from going to decent to pretty good, but once you go from pretty good to excellent, and then you get to the top university. So I think as far as increasing your reputation and those numbers, it's really difficult. So BU has really made a commitment to academics, which I fully support. So the first thing we're going to look at is transcript, is the kid admissible. And then as we get, we are looking at athleticism, stick skills, and then character and toughness as the 4 things that are going to be most critical. Offensively, the athleticism, can he create his own shot? We're constantly looking for guys that can just break down a defense. We find it there's some special players out there that are just good enough and smart enough IQ that they can do work with a guy on their hip. But if you have 6 of those guys or 9 of those guys, it's just really hard when you go against these really athletic teams and good goalies if you can't make the defense move at all. So one thing that we're going to constantly look for is can a guy break somebody down? Certainly at the attack. Those guys are invaluable when you can win your late matchup and create something late in the shot clock now that we have it. And then certainly from a midfield perspective, can you break it down, draw a slide, and then make a good decision?
How do you judge? So if you're saying, you want a guy that can break somebody down, how do you judge that? And when you're out there at a club game, what are you looking for? How do you tell the quality of shots?
I don't know. It's not that I say it comes easy, but I feel like I can tell if I like a kid in 20 seconds. I really do. And I don't know, I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything like that.
Great.
But even when, my assistants will be, hey, we've watched this kid 6 times. We want to offer him. Can you go watch him and kind of make this final decision? I almost feel like within the first 2 times he touches the ball, whether I like him or not. And it's just though, it might come back to my basketball background, just about how a guy moves and how he controls his body and how he controls the slide. And I don't even know how to describe it, Jamie. I just feel like I just have a good sense of what at least I'm looking for and what I see is valuable. And again, there's been kids that I've used this philosophy for and said no, that have gone on to be tremendous college players. So it's certainly not Bible, but I just like a certain athleticism and a certain athletic balance and a certain pop to kids that because at the end of the day, it's really hard to teach someone to be a good dodger. You can talk about, you can work on your footwork and you can work on, technique. But at the end of the day, Brendan Holmeyer could shake you out in the phone booth from the moment he walked on campus, and we did drills and we do split drills and do different things. But I don't know if he got that much better of a dodger because of the drills we were doing. Maybe he got a little bit more, a little bit more efficient with his hand exchanges and being ready to keep his head up and those things. But, he was making guys fall out of their shoes at St. Anthony's, and he was the same when he started doing it against Colgate. So I don't mean to be evasive, but I just I don't even know what I'm looking at. I just kind of see it. I'm like, that kid's got good shake.
Yeah. What about IQ? How do you judge that?
Now I think that's different. I think that is different. Just kind of where he goes with the ball. Kind of, is he a crash and burn dodger? Because like at the same time, if a kid is just all he is straight ahead speed and he can run downhill, and we all love those kids. A kid that's 6'2" and runs like a deer and can make shots going down the alley. Those are always guys that we're always taking notes on. But a guy that can understand a slide, can understand a two slide, understands that it's okay to just throw the ball ahead. Certainly off ball, you can watch a kid off ball. What does he do? One thing that drives me crazy is certainly in these club games and even in the college games, sometimes at practice, when a midfielder is outside the box on an offensive possession where, we're throwing the ball through X and, he should be in the skip lane and he's standing 20 yards from the cage, not quite understanding or waiting for the ball to get the ball back to dodge. So there's just a piece of off-ball motion. And certainly before I got my stick skills in lacrosse, off-ball was critical for me because I just had I wasn't good enough to dodge and make these plays, but I could catch the ball inside and finish, just cutting and understanding spacing. And, so I think I have a pretty good feel for what it looks like and what it should look like. So that, if you just watch a guy for a couple minutes, you kind of understand if he understands it. Because, again, that's hard as hell to teach as well. It's just off-ball spacing. And you can talk about it, you can show it on film. But, if that's not innate in you and you don't do it without thinking about it, a lot of times you're just fighting yourself to do some basic off-ball concepts that can make it challenging to be an efficient offense.
How about defensively? How do you judge guys on ball versus off ball? What are you kind of looking for?
I don't care as much about on ball because just basically from my sliding background and some of my best defensemen I've ever coached weren't great on ball. Like they needed to cover the 2 or 3 and they were just so smart and had great sticks. So I would take a kid with a stick and a kid with IQ over a kid that was just a lockdown guy. Now, I don't coach in the ACC. I don't coach in the Big Ten, so it's not as if I need to go against 2 or 3 attackmen that can usually at the mid majors and the Patriot League. Your third attackman is a really nice player, but he usually is off ball. Very rarely do we go against 2 really heavy dodging presence from at the attack level. So our philosophy in recruiting is we there's nothing wrong with getting that great shutdown defender, and it's always nice if even when I talk about sliding as much as we do, it's always nice, and we talk about this a lot, is when you can take a break midway through a possession because a great on-ball defenseman gets on ball and you don't have to slide to him. Everybody can take a deep breath. You can almost refocus your defense and kind of get everybody in the spot and get ready to slide again because you don't have to slide. So those guys are certainly valuable, but I wouldn't take a kid that couldn't necessarily cover but had a great stick and a great IQ. I think in the defenses that I like to play, those are more important than necessarily being a lockdown defender.
How do you even judge it when you're watching a kid play?
I watch feet. I just watch angles. I mean, for the most part, is a guy, does he understand different parts of the field and how to line up? Certainly in club ball, a lot of times there isn't the practice time. So a lot of times you are left out kind of in an island. So you get to get pretty good one-on-one, especially for polls. Your approach, do you kind of understand where the goal is as you approach? Do you understand, one thing that doesn't bother me, but I always don't quite understand is when a guy's running down the alley and a guy's he's one step behind him in a trail position and the offensive player's running out of angle and our defenseman or our short stick fight to cut off the low angle and the kid just rolls back and gets a great shot. Like that drives me bonkers. So I kind of look at that. And if a kid continuously, is overrunning his player in a non-threatening spot where he's done a great job for 80% of the dodge, but he doesn't quite understand or goes for a terrible check, understanding that positioning is more than half the battle when it comes to playing good one-on-one defense. And then certainly his feet. What does his feet look like as far as his drop steps? How physical is he on goal line? I like physicality on the goal line. And then just, there's certain like little things like one thing that we were big at, and I try to go here. You're either good at a lead poke. You know what a lead poke is, where you kind of lay your stick out. I mean, it's so disruptive for an attackman, but not everybody can do that. Like, it's just like if you find a guy that can do that, I mean, that's something that I think can be really beneficial. But if you try to teach someone who's not good at it, like, forget it. They lead poke and the guy run by and dunks it. So, the little small things that I think can be helpful for a defenseman.
So, do you recruit Canadians?
I'm not great at it, Gene. I wish I had your track record. I went to watch Mike McDonald at Yale and came back in Andy and go, that guy will never play in college. And 200 goals later, a lot against me. It would be such a good fit at BU just because of our hockey program. We've had two come through the program. Ryan Johnson was on our first team, a Hill Academy kid, and had a nice career here. Started as a freshman, was a 3-time captain, did some nice things. And we had a defenseman, Nick Ellerton, who is a senior captain for us as a defenseman. I don't know if their style, because I would say, and you might disagree with me, box lacrosse is so different from basketball as far as spacing and like everything's kind of in tight. It's just hard for me to judge like what is a really good player, because I'm going to go more to the athletic. Like I really wanted Jesse King at Yale, but I mean Jesse was a multiple All-American. I'm sure everybody wanted Jesse, but like that's the type of Canadian like I would want, like a dodging midi who can get downhill. Like I just don't know if I'm adept enough at finding those inside finishers. The guys that I think are going to be great don't have great careers, and the guys who I don't think are talented or whatever, don't look athletic enough, have these great careers. So it
can be really hard, especially if you got like, 20, you're watching 22 kids from, Claremont or Edge or whatever, and they all have the same skill set. It's easy to see the 6'2", 200-pound.
Yeah.
That's really easy. But then sometimes those guys, you don't really want to spend the money to have them become a D midi when they can't really shoot down the alley going the other hand. And so it's almost like you need those guys, the Canadians, to be able to play the way that they grew up playing, essentially, which is in tight, physical, getting shots off with their strong hand when they shouldn't be able to, but they do anyways.
And then it's also, as you said, they're expensive. So you have to figure that into the equation. And then you have to have people that understand them. If you only get one, are they really going to fit in your offense with 5 other guys playing American style ball? And like, then do you have to go get 2? Do you have to go, or you go to Robert Morris and get 6? Is that what you have to do? So
Yeah.
it's kind of, so we've kind of shied away a little bit from that, just because I'm not good at it. It has not been a strength of mine. And we had 2 really good ones, Zadrill and Dempster, when I was there, and I know Andy has done well with them since, but I don't know. It just has not been something, and it's a shame because it could be a really nice fit with our hockey coming in, watching big time hockey. Ryan Johnson kid really liked going to our hockey games, going to the Bruins games. So it's a Northeast fit, so it could be a really nice fit. We just have not, haven't succeeded with it yet.
The interesting stat from this guy, Mike Mobison, is that over the last 10 years, Canadians have shot around 31% and Americans have shot at 26%.
Yeah.
So it's actually like, there's some stats there, but I know what you mean.
I know. Well, I'm sure we shoot about 21%. So I'm helping this stats out, this theory out.
Well, RP, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing
fun, man.
philosophies and experiences. You've built an amazing program, and I know you're really anxious to take that next step and get to the NCAA tournament. And best of luck in 2020.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Have a good one. Have a good holiday. See you.
The Phi-Lacrosse-ophy podcast is made possible in part by the JM3 video assessment tool. There's no question that video is critical to player development. One way or another, your son or daughter must utilize video to learn their game and the game. To learn more, see video testimonials, or register, go to www.jm3sports.com/video right now.